Are we good? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call this board workshop to order. It is 5 o'clock. Woohoo! Before we get started, I need an approval of the agenda. Brian, I think Mary Caitlin. All in favor? Aye. Good, Sarah. Okay. And we are going to get right started with our workshop topics because we have lots of great information to learn about and listen to today. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Mr. Provenzano.
Thank you, and I'm really excited and pleased to be welcoming humanities presentation. Dr. T and Jacqueline Sauter, who's our Director of Humanities, will be coming forward to have a conversation of all the great things that we're doing in humanities, and it's kind of appropriate because we are discussing the instructional budget these days, and a lot of these pieces will be fitting into the conversations we're having in the coming weeks. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. T and Jackie. And I do have a presentation I'll be queuing up right here.
Good evening, everyone. I mean, you could test the skills, Brian. I think I could do it, but let's not embarrass anybody. Okay. Good evening. Before we get started, I just want to remind us that everything we talk about when we're talking about curriculum and instruction is grounded in MTSS, right? So this is a lot of Tier 1 conversation, but it's also some Tier 3 conversation. So you'll hear some updates in both of those areas. And then the other piece that I just wanted to highlight is I've been on a quest to visit every teacher in Fairport. Jackie and the other directors have been joining me throughout. I think we're at close to 210 teachers that we visited so far. In our visits, we visited a lot of elementary classrooms where we've been able to see 95% in wit and wisdom happening in the classrooms. And when I tell you the joy that kids have, and teachers, but kids have doing phonics lessons, which I never thought I would say those words all together, it's amazing. And so I hope you get a chance to visit our wit and wisdom. There's lots of artifacts that the kids have been creating, and if you have little ones, you can ask them about their schwas and their closed and opens. It's just really, really amazing. And not only is the instruction amazing, but the results are amazing. And so we're going to get into that right now. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jackie.
All right, thank you. So like Dr. T said, we're going to start with elementary. So as you know, last year we piloted both 95% and wit and wisdom, and this year we moved forward with full implementation. So this is just a quick reminder. That image is Scarborough's rope, which is really our science of reading background. So 95% really focuses on, go for it.
Sorry, just as you're situating the wit and wisdom and 95%, when you say piloted, who decided on these two programs? Who picked them?
Yeah, so we put several programs, so this is pre-Jackie. We put several different programs in front of a subcommittee to review, and it was decided by that group that we would pilot wit and wisdom. And so Ellen, teachers, so it was teachers, many teachers, Kristen Irwin, Jess Jones, so our elementary staff. So it was a representative body of our teaching staff and our admin. Okay. Yeah, and so after we also put it in front of, we brought it to Diversity Council as well, so our families also got to see the, if you remember that, the books and the things that were involved. So we had a criteria. This is what met the criteria, and we decided to pilot these two programs only, because oftentimes when you do a pilot, right, there's pluses and minuses in any program that you have, and whoever is piloting is like, adopt this one, and then you break somebody's hearts. And it didn't matter which of the 2 or 3 that we decided to go with, because they all had similar attributes. And then there was also, we knew there was going to have to be course adjustment, which is what we're going to be working on this summer.
I think it's also important to note that when we say piloted, it wasn't a small group of teachers. Almost all of Brooks Hill piloted, so ultimately Brooks Hill is almost in year 2 of this, and there were a lot of representation at the other 3 elementaries too, so it wasn't just a small group. It was a lot of teachers that were a part of it, which was amazing. We're in our year 1. This is
she's in year 1.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am also in year 1, so I am learning right along with them, but it's great. So
Go ahead.
Did you have that large number of teachers piloting because you like opened it up to anybody who wanted to, or were they asked to? How did that happen?
Yeah, we said, anybody want to pilot? And it was interesting to see who jumped on. A lot of times grade levels, when you have a really tight grade level, they'll say, all right, let's take it on together. And that's kind of what happened at Brooks Hill. And
Right,
so
'cause they have
almost,
co-plans, so
yeah.
they'd rather do it together.
yep. So almost everybody there. So it was, and then a smattering across the rest of the schools.
Yeah, but we had representation from every grade level in the pilot, so, which is important to us.
And we know that 95% is a much easier lift than wit and wisdom, but we also know from what we know on the science of reading that you have to have both of those strands be very, very strong. And so heavy lifts are okay, and we're going slow so we can learn.
Yeah, so the next thing that I think is important to talk about is the support for teachers with new programming. Because like we said, we'd moved 2 new ELA programs at elementary, and that was a lot. So all teachers were trained in both programs prior to the school year. So either in the spring or during the summer, we made sure they got an overview of the programs. Then this year, every teacher, and that includes ENL teachers and special educators, were given a half-day release day with myself and our instructional coach to really dig into Module 2 of Wit and Wisdom. So they dug into Module 1 over the summer. We wanted to make sure before Module 2 kicked off, they had time to sit down with us, unpack the learning, unpack the knowledge and skills students would need. The other thing that we've been able to provide teachers this year is they can have up to 6 hours of professional development time per month per program. So this is on their own time to unpack and understand the programs. We thought this was really important because especially with Wit and Wisdom, it's not a just pick up the manual and teach, right? They really had to understand what students were asked to do, what the end goal was. So we were able to provide them some of that time this year to really dig into and understand the resources before they start working in front of kids. We've also used grade level meetings. The main focus of most of our grade level meetings has been on reinforcing that key learning and walking them through collaborative planning. And then I've been spending 1 day a month at every building just to be there to support. So during that time, I'm there for questions. I've done co-teaching with teachers, co-planning. I've modeled lessons so that they could observe and get more comfortable. So we just want to make sure that we're continuing that support for teachers with these programs as we move forward.
And then our lead, so our TOSA, Kristen Irwin, has been doing the same thing.
Yep.
And then there's some rock star teachers across all of our buildings that have stepped up. I just met somebody at Northside yesterday who's been running her own little PLC for her grade level, and it's been amazing. So it's really been a collective effort that Jackie has been able to lead. So it's been great.
With the professional development time that they're offered, you said that's outside of their normal workday. Is that paid time?
So that is a choice, I believe, of CTLE credits or paid or hours towards their
combination.
stipend. Yeah.
And
So they
sometimes-
do get compensated in some way.
So I think if they have to get a certain number of hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
They might rather use it towards that, or if they've already met the. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Either way, they get credit.
They have options so that it was valuable to everybody, no matter if they were a
So
new
they're not
teacher or a
working for
tenured
free.
teacher.
They're getting,
No,
they are being
no.
compensated for the
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Correct.
All right. Okay, so just a reminder with our MTSS structures, a healthy system, that top tier 3, where that the highest needs are in any content area that we're talking about or social emotional learning should be between 1% and 5% of your population, right? So just a reminder that should be teensy tiny percentage, and then the bottom, the green, should be the bulk of your students. That's a healthy system. We're on our way to healthy. Okay, I'm going to use optimistic language. So I'm just going to walk you really quick through a couple pieces of data, and then you can ask some more questions as we go. We broke out kindergarten and first grade because Ames Web did a really nice job with these triangles for us. So what you see here is Ames Web data from fall to winter for our current kindergartner kids. Okay, so our current case.
So Ames Web is our program that we use for screening our students. So for kindergarten, what we're screening them in is letter sound fluency and letter identification, basically. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. It's different than NWEA, and actually we are probably making a decision to go to Ames Web for ELA because it is much more comprehensive, and it really does get after those skills and the skill gaps in a much more comprehensive way than NWEA does for us for ELA. Yep. So great question. So In the fall, kids are asked to name sounds and name letters. And we had 31% of our kids fell into tier 3. That's fine. They shouldn't really know anything. They're entering kindergarten, right? But with good tier 1 instruction and quality intervention, we've been able to close that gap since fall to winter to 21%, so a 10% decrease in tier 3. That's what happens in healthy systems as you move kids through those structures. So that feels great.
Not even a year in.
No,
No.
half a
Yeah.
year. Like, what else is going to happen, right? And it's okay that there's still kids in tier 3 because they're still getting intervention. There's still kindergartners. We're gonna close these gaps. This is a really great thing.
So a quick data question on that. So the 80-15-5 kind of model for tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. But at kindergarten, when they come in, as you said, a lot of them are coming in new, and especially this cohort coming in with COVID and interrupted. So is that 80-15-10 is not something we should expect to see in the first?
I wouldn't expect that
Like,
in
in
kindergarten for
fall.
sure. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I would expect us, as we continue to have solid tier 1 instruction over the next 2 to 3 years, I would expect our other grade levels to be closer to that over time. But there's bubbles and gaps because of all the things you just named, Brian. All right, let's look at first grade. Again, really, we don't expect first graders to know much, but look at how big that red tier 3 was to start the school year.
And
We
so,
had 50% of our kids, half.
and so for first grade, what they did is an oral reading fluency. So they read for 1 minute to a teacher, and the teacher marked what words they read correctly or incorrectly, and they did that 2 times. So this is off of them actually getting the words off the page.
So we
Yeah.
cut that almost in half in
amazing.
from fall to winter. And I know you all have little ones some of you have little ones learning to read right now, and it's really beautiful to watch those light bulbs go off, right? It's really exciting. So we just wanted to pull out KN1 because those numbers were really impressive. But go ahead, Brian. I see you. No, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, do we have the resources to provide tier 3 support for 50% of first graders? Like, how did that actually look?
So what we've been doing is, so this is based off of the screen, right? So
Right.
after they get flagged on the screen, we then perform diagnostics on them. So that allows us to dig in a little deeper to like, what is the actual need? Because with any assessment, these are kindergarten and first graders we're talking about here. So they're 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. Sometimes it doesn't always go. So we want to make sure with the diagnostics that we're actually finding out what the need is. So we then prioritize based on what their need was and what they were working on. So like I was saying, this was for their oral reading fluency. For an early first grader, that is a very challenging thing to do. It's just a page of text and they have to read it. So we kind of figured out what students really didn't have letter sounds, and those were the kids
Those are
that
the
we
ones.
prioritized, because in class, in tier 1, they were working on exactly what was going on the screen, being able to read full words. So we kind of had to prioritize what is our main target we have to hit first, which for this was sounds.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of this movement is just solid tier 1 instruction. And then a good portion of it is also tier 3 intervention because they didn't know their letter sounds. You can't read if you don't know your letter sounds. All right, and then this graph is going to show you, or these two are going to show you all of our K5. So I have it first in chart form, and then I'll show it to you in a, oh, it might not be uploaded. We have it in a pretty graphic to match the triangles, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's just the top got smaller. I know, it's amazing, right? So this is all of K5. So if you look at in the fall, again, Ames Web, and the measures are different at each grade level, but in the fall, we had 23% of our kids falling in that top tier 3. In the winter, we got that down to 15%. So we're closing those gaps. We are on our way to a healthy system. It's really exciting. And that's because of, again, solid tier 1 instruction and intervention. All right, Jack.
All right. Yeah.
I just feel like we need those confetti cannons for our teachers right now.
I
Because, like, to
know.
take on 2 new programs and then to see that kind of growth, like, I just want those little,
And
like,
I have to say, there's lots of commitment and dedication
100%.
to how do we continue to build upon this? How do we use our summer time to refine this, our scope and sequence, our strategies, our interventions, and even our master schedule. We've been getting updates on and how this impacts, some modifications we're looking at for our master schedule, so we could continue to build upon this exciting work.
And just one anecdote, when we were visiting one of the elementary schools, popped in a first grade class, sat down with a teacher, and they were so excited about Wit and Wisdom and the work they were doing. This was sometime in the fall semester, I don't remember when, and sat me down, was like going through, and like I was there probably 15 minutes because she was going through working with a student and then working through how this new program was different and how it was better. And to see that, and as a veteran teacher, someone who's been doing this for a long time, so seeing that, you could see that buy-in with the student, with the teachers, and that as they're excited and seeing, and of course seeing results is the ultimate motivator, right? You see that growth, and you're like, oh, this is good. And so we're seeing, it's an N of 1, but seeing that in the classroom is always great to see.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that's exactly what we're seeing when we visit classrooms too. I got to sit next to a 5th grader yesterday, a young man, and they were doing their 95% lesson, and they had to break apart words. The word was curriculum.
Which was really funny.
And so the kids had to figure out how many syllables in curriculum and then try to spell that. And most kids haven't seen that word in print, right? That's not unless maybe your mom's a teacher. But he was talking to me as he's doing it, and he's like, "Cur, all right, so it could be a K, but most words start with a C. Not a K, so it's probably a C. That could be an IR or a UR, or it can't be an ER because I know that then makes the C soft." Like, this is what this 5th grader is saying to me. And it was amazing. And the just their tenacity to stick through those really hard words. It was just, I love it. It's been the best thing.
It's the best part is seeing the kids enjoy it and be proud of their work. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And then you see the teachers be like, yeah, we got it. They did it. Yeah.
So is there a year-end kind of one of these that we hope will show continued progression?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So we'll be able to pull the same kind of data at the end of the year.
So just out of curiosity, is there a number? I mean, obviously the number is 51580. That's the goal. But is there a realistic number that you guys hope to be able to show us at the end of the year or have on the data dashboard that would be like, this is the right, this is clearly what we want?
That's a good question, Brian. I think my gut is saying to you right now, I'd love to go down another 5% at tier.
10%.
Well, and then but my hope is that we're at more than that. But I think realistically.
Temper that because
Yeah.
I mean, I think Dr. T, you're probably on the money and you're probably winning that.
Yeah, how much?
The goal is the coherence.
Right.
The goal is to build capacity, and over time that number will take care of itself. And I know we'll see that incremental success. I know the PD will be very explicit how we spend our conference days in the future. That will be very well defined. So I'm more excited about the process because the
100%.
process is going to build the results that we get excited about.
And we're going to bring a data warehouse where we can show you this so much easier because this took a lot of work. Just a reminder, every time we pull data to show you all, it takes us quite some time.
Yes, I count.
All right, we're going to shift.
sorry, can I
Oh,
answer
go
that?
ahead, Lisa.
Does 95%, does that replace Haggerty, or are they still doing both of those?
So that's a great question. So in 1st and 2nd grade, it is replacing Haggerty completely. Haggerty, 95% has a phonemic awareness piece. So Haggerty is still a resource that kindergarten has, and they're using it in small groups for more targeted instruction because Haggerty gets a little bit more in depth. So we've told them use it when you're working with kids in small groups when you notice a very specific phonemic awareness need, then you can use that Haggerty as a resource. But 95 has the same types of skills in it.
Thanks. And this is maybe something you don't have the data for, but I'm kind of just curious, as you're starting to use AIMSweb more and maybe phasing out NWEA, have you seen a correlation between those two? Like as far as when your AIMSweb scores are going up or your NWEA ones going up?
So right now it's hard to tell because for AIMSweb, the only portion that we're giving right now is the oral reading fluency. So that is purely decoding. There's no comprehension. AIMSweb has a comprehension piece and a vocabulary piece, which we haven't been giving because we didn't want to double test our kids. So for some kids, yes, as their oral reading fluency increases, their comprehension increases. So we do see that in MWA, but it's not necessarily perfectly correlated.
Gotcha.
Just
So it's
because-
not two tests measuring the same thing. So you
That's
can
not
do
at this
the
point, no.
reliability between the
Yeah.
two. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense to not double test the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically what we had been doing through this year is we NWEA all the kids, and then we go in AIMSweb to find out where those gaps are in those specific skills. What we'll move for decoding or oral reading fluency, what we'll move to is doing the comprehensive AIMSweb, which covers everything NWA does, but then it's just one test instead of all the tests. Yeah. right, we're gonna shift just.
yeah.
Oh, sorry,
I have a
Jan.
quick question. So before we head to social studies,
Yeah.
so just thinking, obviously we have clear tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 kids all in one classroom.
Yep.
So how does I'm not so much 95%, but maybe how does more wit and wisdom, or even maybe either of the programs, maybe you can speak to, like, how do they meet the needs of all of those different styles of learners that you have in the classroom? Like, are teachers still able to use these two programs to meet your range of students?
Yes, that's a great question. So for 95%, it is really important for us that every kid is exposed to that grade level phonics. So all kids are being a part of the whole group portion, but we've told teachers that during that win what I need time, that's where we break out and really work on those individual skills in 95%. But the other thing we've encouraged teachers to do is scaffold as needed, right? So in 95%, there's portions of the lesson where students need to read independently. Well, maybe some students aren't there yet, so teachers are able to pull those kids aside and sit with them and things like that. Wit and wisdom allows for a lot of differentiation in that a lot of it is based in conversations. So what we've actually found is some of the most success in wit and wisdom is happening in our ICT classrooms, because even if kids can't access the text by reading it, they're able to speak to it and talk about it and grow from it, which has been huge. And then we've been working with teachers, and we're going to continue to work on this next year, and how to help scaffold that writing of wit and wisdom a little bit so that we can make sure that we're meeting kids where they are and moving them along the writing process. But what we're doing right now is actually gathering writing samples from all grades, all levels. I've told teachers, I don't just want your exemplar students, I want everybody, so that we can start to see, okay, what are our expectations, and then how do we help students at different levels of writing within our program.
I challenge board members, when you go into your monthly visits at elementary school, take a look at the walls,
Yeah.
right? And then
It's
you'll
all
see
over.
the different modalities of the things that occur. And I'm fortunate enough to just have this conversation with a teacher just the other day, that exact question. And they were just excited about how kids are moving and active, and how there's opportunities to interact and do whole class, lots of group work. So
Oh, yeah.
it hits all the modalities, and I think that's see the brain synapses up there and all that good stuff. That's what this-
Yeah, I just want to stress, in our master schedule shift that we made at the elementary schedule, when we put a what I need block, an intervention block in place, what that guaranteed is that every kid, no matter their level, is getting the same tier 1 instruction. Everybody needs that. So like Jackie was saying, the wit and wisdom text might be too high level for some kids to access, but because we're building background knowledge and comprehension, it's important for them to be part of the entire lesson and part of those questions and conversations. In the past, kids may have been pulled out for portions of that to get their intervention, and now you're making more gaps for a kid that needs gaps filled and not widened, right? So
to move this, because we could spend, and we will
the entire time.
And I
You
think
tell us.
that's exciting as far as the data pieces go, as far as learning more about intervention pieces. Those are all things that we could tailor. But I think the most important thing that I'm learning, it's time, right? Teachers need more time, more interaction, more opportunities to grow, and then adapt their practice to it. And I think that's what we're trying to commit to as a district, whether it's through our master schedule, whether it's through our PD, whether it's through curriculum writing in the summer. They just need to continue to build upon it.
one of the best things about wit and wisdom is that it is it crosses all content areas.
Yep.
And so Jackie's going to talk about that for just a second with social studies.
Yeah, so for this year, we did provide teachers with a resource. It's SSELA. It's written by Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, just to kind of support and with some of the social studies standards, because we were doing such a strong ELA focus. We wanted them to have an easy resource, and we rolled that out on October Conference Day. But some of the summer work we're doing this year is really trying to cross-reference where those social studies standards align with our wit and wisdom programming. So we're not having to double dip things for kids. Yes, it's great for them to have the background knowledge, but it'll also give our teachers that time piece, right? If I'm already teaching this in wit and wisdom, I don't have to hit it again separately in a different block of time. So we're trying to see, and also, I know this isn't about science, but we're also doing the same thing with science, because some of the wit and wisdom units are science-based as well.
Yeah, if you have any first graders, I think they just finished the Life in Sea or something, a sea
Yeah, they're
life
in the
unit.
animal.
Yeah.
It's like animals. They're in an animal unit. It's very
So
cool.
that happened in Wit and Wisdom, but then in Mystery Science, they did the same thing. And so
Creature
there's some
features.
overlap, which is awesome, but then also if we want time back, could we condense a little more? So we're looking at all of that. All right.
So just to get into, and I'll be really brief on this one, science of reading training for staff. So we use the LETTERS program. LETTERS stands for Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling, and it has 2 modules. So all K-12 literacy specialists have already been trained in that first module, volume 1. That's on word recognition, so that 95% part, right? And then the other volume is on language comp. So of our elementary staff, that includes ENL and special education teachers, 70% are fully trained in volume 1. A lot of them are actually going through it right now with some release time, and we're going to work to finish all elementary staff over the summer or in early fall. At this point, our volume 2, again, that's about language comprehension, has been optional, but we have 75 elementary teachers that have chosen to do it. So they're working through it on their time. They're getting professional development credit for it, but they're doing this learning on their own time, and then we're bringing them together to have conversations. The other thing that was really important for me was to start moving this work to secondary, because science of reading does not only live at elementary. I think it's important that we put that throughout. So on April Conference Day, grades 6 through 8 English and social studies teachers, and then 6 through 12 special educators and ENL are going to get an overview of science of reading, so we can start to talk about how this pertains to their roles and how they can impact kids' literacy abilities in their classrooms.
And if you remember from last year, we did also do letters for admin, and so they've gotten an overview to have the essentials of what an admin needs to know when they walk in a classroom to make sure that things are aligned to the science of reading.
And this is the training that the governor is like kind of forcing districts to do, but we've already been doing
We're already,
it. So
Yeah, we're
awesome.
feeling really good about our path that we're on and the conversations that are happening at the state level.
Yeah, 100%. When she put out her release, we were already in that direction, so it was kind of keep moving forward.
All right.
So middle school English uses a resource, Common Lit. They each right now do 1 Common Lit unit per grade level. It's really small there, but 6th grade does a unit called Embracing Our Differences. 7th grade does one about adolescence and kind of breaking some of the myths of adolescence, which is timed appropriately with their age. And then 8th does one called Us and Them, which is the impact of othering in your society. So on top of though, they really enjoy those units. They have some really nice texts in there. They're very rigorous. It does align well with Wit and Wisdom because it's really working on those conversations, looking at rigorous text, and then responding in writing. The other thing middle school worked on this year is really aligning common assessments so that we can start to use that data from the classroom to better help us in data reviews, right? So if every teacher across the district gave the same assessment, we can then better use that data to compare kids. For next year, we're looking at bringing another Common Lit unit to each grade level. They've already started to pick which ones they want. So they'll have 2 per grade level, and then they're also working on adopting more culturally responsive text. So that's one that's coming to the board soon.
Yeah.
I don't think it's come yet,
I think
but
it's next month.
next month. Rebound. So that was one of the texts just to preview to you.
Jackie, do you know, so I know we've talked about the common grade level assessments. How is that going? Are they developing them? Do you see it actually happening?
It is. For English, actually, it's pretty much done. They haven't given all of them yet in the year. What's nice is they already had 1 common assessment through Common Lit. So what we worked with them to do is talk about like what other units do you all do. The only thing we had to do to help support them, because one of their barriers was we all read this book, but we only have 1 set of it. So we all read it at different times. So because of that, we couldn't give the assessment at the same time. So we've helped support them with some of our textbook funds to be able to say, okay, let's buy the text so that you can all read it at the same time. And then it becomes a common assessment, right? Because they were all giving the same assessment before, just at different times in the year. So it's not as valid data. So English is doing an amazing job with common assessments. 6th grade is done. 7th grade is done, and then 8th grade, they're developing 1 more for the end of the year, but they already have 2.
And I have one more question.
Yeah.
Is it consistent between Martha Brown and JP?
Yes, when we've done this work, so luckily their department meetings meet across buildings. So when we've done this work, it's been department meeting work or release day work so that we can pull across buildings. Yeah.
And then when we bring in our data warehouse, so these common assessments will be able to be pulled, the results will be able to be pulled, and we'll have a comprehensive look of what does it look like in 6th grade across the district. Okay, now I can drill down to my classroom, now I can drill down to a kid. Right now, that is on somebody's Excel spreadsheet. It's just not efficient. So we're on our way to that.
Yeah.
All right. Next up.
Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about literacy lab, and this kind of spans middle school, Minerva, and high school, so I chunked them all together because we're meeting as one department to do this work. So I've been working with the department to start to analyze cut scores for how we determine what students get literacy lab every day and what students get literacy lab every other day. It's really important for us to streamline this across, especially across the 2 middle school buildings, right? We want it to be the same no matter where you go to middle school. What your score is will qualify you for literacy lab. The other thing we've been working through is intervention mapping of their resources. So what that looks like is we're looking at what resources they have, what profile of student need should you be targeting with that resource. And again, part of that is getting that consistency across buildings, also across Minerva and the high school, because as we're looking towards the consolidation of those 2 buildings, we really want them to be on the same page. And then the other thing that we've been working through, and this is in the early stages, but working with Minerva and again the high school to really make sure we have the right labs in place to support students, right? Our reading labs, our writing labs, making sure that we're identifying what is the real need that students have, and then are we making sure we're scheduling them in the appropriate lab for that. So we're working through those things.
All right, this is, oh, yeah, go ahead, Jackie, do
No,
this
you're
one.
good.
Yeah, I thought it was a different slide.
No, you're good. So Minerva and the high school, their huge focus has really been culturally responsive text. And a part of that is short stories, because they've talked a lot about how they don't only want it to be full-length text. We really want to get short stories in there. So you did approve Between the World and Me this year. The teachers are already working on curriculum writing to roll that out this year. They're super excited to get that in front of their students. So we're going to continue that work over the summer and also look at making sure everything is aligned to standards.
Jackie, what grade are they reading it in?
11th grade.
Just
It's
wanted to,
AP
yeah, is that what that means right there?
Yep,
Okay.
Yep, it's in their AP language class in 11th grade.
All right, we're really excited about this. So this course proposal will be coming to the board in the next month. But we had a strong student interest in the AP African American Studies course. So this was a completely student-driven course proposal. They actually got over 100 student signatures for this course. And then when we brought it to the department, we had a huge response from our department in social studies on who wants to teach it. We have 5 interested teachers right now, including an ENL teacher. And so we're really excited about that piece. We're going to send all of those people to training so that when we're ready to roll this out, pending board approval, which we're looking at next year's 25, 26, we will have a bank of teachers that are ready to go depending on course requests and how the master schedule works. So we're ready for that. And this next year we'll be working on creating our curriculum so that we can submit it to AP for course approval. Again, pending board approval of the course.
So Social Studies 612 has really all been centered around some work with the Seal of Civic Readiness. So the Seal of Civic Readiness is a recognition from New York State for students that have high levels of proficiency in civic knowledge, civic skills, civic mindset, and experience. The slide talks a little bit about some of the distinctions, but if students have that on their diploma, it's really because they completed some civics projects throughout their coursework. They showed a strong desire to do civics work and engage in civics across their local community. So it does really encourage and require students to be active in their local community. So
yeah, which aligns completely with our mission as a school district. And then also, if you remember the Blue Ribbon Commission that we talked about at retreat, that this is probably the direction the state's heading, is in multiple pathways and endorsements for diplomas. So this feels like a very good step for us. And then Jackie's going to show you how ready we are as a district anyways.
So that's really hard to read, but I'll just explain it to you. So the requirements to get the seal is students need to get 6 points total. 2 points need to be on the left side, which is civic knowledge. So that's really your coursework, right? So that first one says 4 credits of social studies. Then it's mastery on a social studies regents, proficiency on a social studies regents, being in an advanced course, and a research project. So that's the left side. And they also need to get at least 2 points on the right side. So that's civic participation. So the first one is a high school civics project, a service learning project. They can do an elective course where they have some civic engagement. There's also a middle school capstone and then extracurriculars. And then there's also the option for a civics capstone project we'll talk about in a minute. So students need a total of 6 across those.
So how many is it on the left side?
So you need a total of 6, but the only requirement is you have to get 2 on each side. So You cannot get all
No,
6 on
I was
one
just
side.
making sure where it said like advanced social studies. I didn't know if they had to have
you
that.
don't
Nope,
have to
no,
do that.
no, no, no.
That-
Jacky's
I'm
going to
going to
show you a bunch of different
We broke
ways.
down options for how
Yeah.
Fairport
Okay,
students could get it.
thanks.
We just also want to say the state already did approve this as a +1 pathway for graduation. Yep, so it's already been approved. This was actually pulled right off of NYSED. Yep. So the next couple of slides will show you some possibilities for students in Fairport to get the seal. So this is my option 1. This is your tier 1 student, right? So that left side has 1 point for 4 credits of social studies, so they're regular 4 social studies courses, and then 1 point each for proficiency on the global regions and proficiency on the US regions. Proficiency is defined as 65 or higher. And then the right-hand side they have 2 civic projects, because you can do that twice, which we'll talk about in a minute, but we're working to embed that in our coursework so that all students have access to that. And then there's possibility for 2 half points for extracurriculars or work-based, but that's almost extra at that point. You don't even need it. You don't get anything for getting more than 6 points. You just need 6. So that's the tier 1 option.
All right, so we're good there?
Yep.
All right.
So then I wanted to show you, because I do think we have a lot of advanced placement students at Fairport. So option 2A is that advanced placement portion. So the left-hand side you'll see is a total of 5 points. They get a point for social studies credit. They get 1.5 points for mastery on the regions for global and 1.5 points for mastery on the regions for US. And mastery is defined as 85.
4, right?
Or a 4 on the AP.
Or a 4 in the way we report regions now.
And then they have to take an AP or an honors. But again, those are extra points at that point. You don't need to get 9.5 points. And then the right-hand side is those 2 civics projects that would already be embedded in their coursework, and extracurriculars and potentially an elective. But again, that's way more than they need, so it's great.
It's naturally using the program that we currently.
Yeah, we
Well, we
have-
already have.
Back right
Yeah.
into this.
We
Wow.
have
So I
all the elective, we have all the course offerings.
I think I was looking at this and my wonder was as a parent of an about to be high school student, this is overwhelming, and I was very getting glazed looking
Yeah.
over this beforehand, and it's not your fault.
No.
It's just this. And so I'm wondering how we can make this approachable to students and parents who are going to hear about the seal of civic readiness and what is that? Do they have to do that to graduate? And then there's all this math and what's a course, and so how do we? I'm
get
sure
to
there's a
that.
plan.
Yep.
But I'm wondering
Yeah.
what the plan is to make it so
100%.
it's not overwhelming to parents and kiddos.
Yep. I will touch on that. So option 2B, so we at Fairport have an amazing leadership course where they basically already do a capstone project. They're just not calling it a capstone project, but it meets all the requirements of a capstone project by New York State, and it is completely civic readiness right there. So if students take the leadership course, they would already get 4 points for that capstone on the right-hand side for civic participation, and then their points on the left are for their 4 social studies courses, and that's just proficiency on the regions. So again, they would get 7. The last one I wanted to be sure to note was our tier 2 or tier 3 students. So what is on the left-hand side here is I have 1 point for the 4 credits of social studies because they need that for graduation, but I left off the tests. I left off the regions, okay? The other thing on there is a research project. Now, this research project can be ingrained in any content, which I know we already have research projects in many classes. So it's just choosing which classes. So maybe an English class or whatever. But that would be it. So this really targets those students that might not perform well on those Regents exams, but still are civically engaged and participating in the community. So then the right-hand side again is those 2 civics projects that would already be ingrained in their coursework, nothing extra, and then maybe an elective or an extracurricular such as student government or something like that to get them up to the 4 points.
So any kid in Fairport could access this seal or this pathway to graduation.
Can I ask a dumb question?
No dumb questions.
Oh no, you'll want it. So, the seal of civic readiness. What is, and again, maybe this is more as a parent than as a board member, but what is the point of having this? Like you could get a seal of civic readiness. Okay. What's the why to do that? Other than it probably looks good on your thing and all that. Is that it, or is there?
Yeah. If you remember, last year we introduced the seal of biliteracy. Same thing. It is a feather in your cap right now of you are a civic ready graduate, and for right now it just looks well. It could be a pathway to graduation for kids, right? So that's one. And the second thing is, it looks really, really great for wherever you're going next with your careers and your life. And we do think New York State is headed in the direction of multiple pathways to graduation. And so us getting our ducks in a row and all our systems aligned to manage all of these things now makes sense for what's coming down the pipe for us.
So,
Yeah. Erica, you have graduates. You tell us.
No, I mean, there was a slide earlier that just kind of listed off who is looking at these different things, not just colleges, but possibly employers. I mean, bottom line, don't we all want our students to be involved in our community?
Sure, but I guess I agree with that. But I'm thinking again, this is more as a parent of somebody than sitting on this. When I see information about your pathway to your seal of civic readiness. Sure, that's my reaction as a parent. Like that, it's more the compelling why of do I need this to graduate?
I think it speaks to what I think Jan was speaking to earlier about multiple intelligences. And as a district, we really try to nurture individual interest. We know that we have a handful of kids that are passionate, and it might not be your child, and it might not be my child, but it might be, Jan's child. And I think that's what we're trying to do is now tap into what we already have and put a seal on it. And if students benefit from it, but you're right, you're not wrong in it's not resonating with me, but we do know through the Blue Ribbon Commission that there's going to be other seals that might strike a chord.
And it's much more of a, and you're doing this. We're going to do this. Just that clarity when it's unrolled to parents that okay, do you have to have a seal of civic readiness? No, this is why it looks good. This is why it's a good thing. But just making it clear, so because again, lens of a parent of an 8th grader, but like going into middle school and all these new and how you graduate is like
overwhelming.
It can be overwhelming, and I just want to make sure.
So from the perspective of a parent of a senior, he did the CTE, like the computer technology engineering. So that I don't think he ever put it on any applications. It didn't come up in that sense, but just throughout high school, it did also give him direction. Like in his mind, he's an engineering person, and it helped him narrow down which classes he wanted to take and feel like he was working towards something other than just the degree. Like it kind of narrowed his focus a little bit more and gave a purpose for some of his classes. And so I think having those for a wider variety of interests, where it's like, oh look, I'm really passionate about this, and here's this seal I'm going to be able to work toward to demonstrate that that's
similar
my
to
interest.
the biliteracy.
Biliteracy,
because not everybody is going to be amazing at 2 languages.
And can I just say too, I really appreciate this option 3 thing.
Yeah.
Me too.
Because I mean, I have kiddos that have IEPs.
Yep.
They want to do the same thing, but there may not be an option for them in the first option. But having this other option will be helpful for them.
Absolutely.
And do you know if this sort of like 3-tiered option plan going forward will sort of be outlined in all of the Blue Ribbon pathways?
So this is our plan
Our plan.
specifically
Yeah,
for
that's what I'm
Fairport.
saying.
So the outline from the state is slide 17, which is just the 6 points and how you can get them. Each school district then decides what meets the criteria and where the points can lie. So Jackie and her team went through to see what courses does Fairport offer and how many different ways could we get kids that want to do this. Again, you don't have to. Kids that want to do this to that path, and there's a lot of different ways without adding any courses.
I do see a bright spot in the future on all of our seals. And then secondly, I think the overall purpose here, I know that we get caught up into our own personal circumstances, but it's about coherence. And it's aligning our programming to the standards and the expectations that are grounded in SED. So I think that's the overall thing, and it is kind of exciting trying to see where your own individual circumstances fit. I'm here doing it myself, but at the end of the day, a lot of that's going to bear out too.
So this is a large lift
Yeah,
for our
that's what I was
teachers
just
and our
gonna say.
counselors.
Yeah.
How do we have some sort of warehouse
Yeah,
system?
yeah,
Because if
yeah.
I did a class in 10th grade project, like,
Right.
and I'm looking for
Yeah,
a senior.
and so that's what I was just going to say next, and then we'll talk about that. So the seal has been around for a little while. There was early piloters. We could have gotten on board with this at any point, and the only reason districts aren't really getting on board with it, because who's going to argue with the seal of civic readiness, is the lift and the management of all the things. How do you know they did this project? How do you know which courses they took? So we found a wonderful resource. So Jackie's going to talk about that.
Yeah, so we found an awesome resource called Local Civics. So it's a company based out of New York City where they really they believe in project-based learning and civic readiness. And what they're doing is tying that in with the seal of civic readiness. So they actually have a warehouse, if you will, or a website where they do all the tracking for you. So it's almost like a Google form, what it looks like to the kids, and the kids will have to go in and track and can answer part of it, and it can actually help scaffold them through the projects, but it allow us to take the tracking off of our teacher's plate so that they can really focus on just the civic engagement in the classroom and the civic projects in the classroom, but not have to live in the minutia of the tracking, because that's tracking kids for many years and it's really challenging.
Do you see counselors?
Yeah,
being
and then
able
that's
to-
shared with counselors.
Counselors
right?
as well.
And then there's
Yep.
oversight from teachers, right? It's not just like I did a capstone
yeah.
project.
Nope,
Awesome.
there
I
has to
wasn't
be.
thinking that. I was thinking more
Yeah.
forgetting to track.
So when is this lifting off? What,
So we plan to put in a proposal. So you have to put in a proposal to the state in order to apply for the seal to start having kids earn it next year. But we're planning on doing a slow lift. So potentially only depending on our readiness, and I'll talk a little bit about where we are in the process, but potentially maybe targeting it towards leadership students first and then building out once we have a better understanding of our system. Because really the state gives you a lot, but you have to build what your requirements are in-house, right? So that's all you. Correct. Yep.
That's what we're doing. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yep.
was just going to say before we let you finish,
No.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I know, Nicole, what you said. I think since as a board, our goal, our vision, and what we're directing the district to do is taking into consideration that options are available for all students, regardless. I don't see that as stopping anytime soon. So I would hope with the pathways that would be similar because of what we're giving in terms of guidance and what our expectation of what is available for our students.
So it is not available right now.
No, but
Okay.
the interesting thing is, so when we offer it next year, students can, we can fill in the gaps. If students already took classes and already did the projects,
That was
they
my next
still get
question.
the check.
That's what I was
Yep.
like, is it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
get the
under-
approval.
Yeah.
But it could be like, well, I know it's not available now, but I'm going to be working and working and working, and then
Well, because ultimately they're all in social studies courses anyway,
Right.
and they're taking the regions anyway and things like that, and they're doing these projects anyway because they're ingrained in the coursework. So yes, we can go back and backfill,
yeah,
so it doesn't knock out
yeah.
students. Yeah.
And I think going back to Brian's point a little bit, because it was exactly what I was thinking too, is we have so many amazing programs like the Seal of Biliteracy and the Seal of Civic Readiness, which I just feel like when we think about future ready raters, like that's what the Seal of Civic Readiness is, right? Like it's not
Okay.
about just taking coursework.
No.
It's about you are doing this so that one day you can go off and lead. And what I love about it is all these options is we don't want those kids who are only doing the leadership course
No.
to be
Yep.
available. So
No.
it's like, and I'm not saying it would, but I just hope it's something we can make available to everybody. Not like, oh, I think this person would be really interested in it. So that's my little soapbox.
I love it.
I
And
think
I'll
if
step
you
off
if you
it.
see how these are structured and scaffolded,
I just think that's
this
so
is
important.
easy if you are intentional and passionate about or interested in getting one of the seals. So I liked how you broke them down because there are multiple pathways. Like
Love
Yeah.
that pathways.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we're gonna-
right now what I'm currently doing is working with all social studies teams to really look at their current projects and audit which of these already are civics projects, right? Or maybe could add a little tweak or a part where we can go out and add it to the community to make it fit for the seal. Because like I said, it's important for me that those civics projects are in our regular coursework so every student has access to it. And we'll be continuing to work on that throughout the year and draft rubrics and things like that so that we're ready when we apply for the state approval.
All right. So we're going to go into what our next steps are in all of these areas.
Okay, so for K-5, what's next is really continuing to unpack those next generation ELA standards and align those with our programming. So we'll be doing curriculum writing projects this summer to really support teachers in wit and wisdom and making sure that the lessons they're manageable, teachers know what to do, and they're ready to move forward. Like I talked about earlier, we're going to cross-reference the social studies standards and also science standards with wit and wisdom, and then really focusing with teachers on how to differentiate that instruction to support student need during win time. So really helping them learn how to use that data to support individual student needs during that what I need time. So for 612, so for literacy specialists, again, we're going to continue the resource mapping and then start to determine exit criteria, because we don't want it to be once students are receiving literacy support, they're in literacy support forever, right? So what are we looking for as exit criteria that when they've met those goals, we can move them back into the classroom setting. And then for 612 English, like I talked about for middle school, we're going to incorporate a second unit of Common Lit and continue to look for culturally responsive text. And then we're going to move into research-based vocabulary instruction, because that really grounds us in the science of reading and making sure that we have great vocab instruction that's incorporated in the text that we're reading. And then social studies is really work on that SEAL. So we're working to create a SEAL committee, because that SEAL committee is really who determines what the criteria is for our specific SEAL. That committee is going to be tasked with creating a handbook that is easy to understand, not complex, that we can share with families, and then really starting to figure out just that piece you were talking about, Brian, how to advertise this to students and families and make it something that people want to do if students are interested in this. And then really looking at just incorporating project-based learning and civic participation in all of our social studies courses, not just for the civics project.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, for science of reading, like I said, we want to continue and finish having K-5 teachers complete volume 1 and keep moving staff into volume 2. And just really have an overall district understanding of how does science of reading apply to all grades and all content areas, because it does. So from math to social studies to science to English to all of them, how do we make sure that that is apparent, and how do we incorporate it into those courses? That's it.
All right. Any other questions for us?
The one word that comes to my mind is just impressive. You know, there's always been great work occurring, but the leadership that you provided, lots of coherence building. It's one of my favorite words when it comes to curriculum. And I appreciate the stewardship to it, and I know that our teachers, because I get a good earful, and you know, they're very happy and excited about what's happening and how we're trying to spiral at K-12. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to recognize Ellen Reed's work to lay the foundation for this before her retirement.
100%.
Absolutely.
That really helped with a seamless pickup for Jackie. So thanks to Ellen.
100%.
Yeah.
And thank you, board, for supporting.
100%,
This is
yeah.
great. This is right in our
Oh,
future.
can I just put one little tiny nugget, semi-related, is the elementary report card is getting revamped. It does not align to the work that we are doing in our elementary schools. And so today at School Improvement Team, the elementary faction of our School Improvement Team spent some very good time working on that report card, got through most of the ELA portion of the report card, and then they'll be meeting again between now and our April conference day to go through the math portion. So if you have elementary kiddos, be looking for a revamped report card for next year.
Wow, that is exciting. When was the last time it was updated?
We weren't here.
I'm not
I
sure.
don't know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hopefully sooner than the homework policy, Mary Caitlin. From today. I'm just kidding. All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you, both of you, for all the hard work. Did anybody have any other questions? I know we asked questions along the way, clarifications. I guess we're
I
excited
just
to
finished
see.
Rebound yesterday and really
Yep.
liked it.
Thank you so much.
Oh, can I ask one question? Back to the other book.
Yeah.
Is it all of 11th grade that is reading it, or is it just because in the quotations it says like advanced? I didn't know what that meant.
I think right now it's living in AP and honors, and then they need to
Okay.
kind of figure out how to scaffold it a
Okay.
little bit,
It's an
because it is
intense
a
book.
very
It's an
intense
That's
text.
yeah, that was.
So I think they're working through, since we did roll it out so fast and they're using it this year already, the teachers felt prepared to move it forward in those courses, and then need to do a little bit more work before we
Okay.
can figure out how to move it forward in others.
But moving forward, it should be across the board.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
That's the goal.
Okay.
At least
you.
excerpts.
Thanks.
At least excerpts. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jackie. From the English department.
And they did what I said to Brett when the microphone, Jackie, when the microphone. Jacob was exited from reading support, right? So that's why I was like, well, they must have some criteria. So it's just not consistent. You're probably right. Yeah, you're probably right. Got it. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So we have more exciting information coming. We're going to be looking at the draft instructional budget. So, Mr. Provenzano and Mr. Stevens.
Thank you very
We're
much.
on.
This is very appropriately spaced and placed because it does align with the instructional budget. And without the instructional budget, the story of what you just heard cannot continue to be built upon. And we're excited to be talking about the instructional budget. But if you take a look at this timeline, there's one piece of this timeline that that I think is missing, and I know that we're going to add it next year. January 31st, it says that's when our budget season starts, but we're moving through it, and you're seeing, like, right now we're in March. It's, in March 7th, and we're talking about the instructional budget, but it starts well before then, and it starts during the summer and into the early fall. And in October, we created these goals for the district, and I'm really proud of these goals, and I say it because it really helps us stay focused. It helps us early on, we start talking about it, so when we get to these points, we're able to know exactly what this conversation is going to entail, and that is prioritizing our school improvement initiatives. And you just heard a very important part of it with Jackie and Dr. T, and there's pieces of UPK. It's making sure that we have all the right resources, and some of you were really talking about the resources of support, the PD that's going to take place to build the capacity, and how do we build this coherent curriculum. That's our MTSS model. We heard about a data warehouse system, and making sure that every single child has access to it. And that's all part of the instructional budget process, and that's what we're going to be focusing in on today. Mr. Stevens is going to walk us through the memo that he shared. He'll be talking about some consistent themes, and from there we can build upon that conversation. But we're going to have the formal presentation ready to go, or on March 19th, the instructional budget and first draft. So we'll see what this looks like in its totality on March 19th. Again, this is just a portion, and then we'll develop the totality. So without further ado, Mr. Stevens is going to jump in and refer to his memo that you have.
Okay, great, and thank you, Mr. Provenzano. So again, as Brett mentioned, to kind of just do a quick summary overview of the instructional budget memo as a whole here. So just kind of jumping in, first portion shows it's about, right now we're at about a $4.5 million increase for an instructional portion of the budget, and this equates to about 5.8%. Mostly, when we look at the budget and the development piece of it, it's for the most part a rollover budget as a whole. There are a few things reflected in here as some additions related to some of the different goals and pieces we have, such as right now textbooks. We've seen with Wit and Wisdom and expressions and renewals and new textbooks and supplies needed for those different pieces. Some additional equipment pieces, athletic programming, equipment replacement as a whole there, with some of the aging equipment, for example, Resolute mat, the system for storing the mats up, wrestling mats up high, replacing those suspension systems. And then for the most part, just looking at the contracts and projecting out salaries as a whole there. And then one of the major pieces here in this budget development is related to the federal stimulus funding. So that probably is the largest piece of funds that were previously coming out of the special aid fund or federal stimulus grant that's ending. American Rescue Plan is the last one in place for schools that ends in September of 24. Essentially, expenses through June of 24 is what we're looking at there. So that equates probably for about between salaries and benefits. Benefits obviously on the non-instructional side of the budget, but about a little over $1.5 million, $1.8 million of funds coming back into the budget as a whole there. So those are some of the different pieces as we navigated through the instructional portion of the budget, and we saw that also on the non-instructional side as well. So just highlight a couple items. You'll see for the most part, you can see factors in federal stimulus funds. That would be related to the expiration of the funds, those expenses, maintaining the programs and services, and those expenses being reflected in the general fund.
And everybody remembers that those funds were supposed to be temporary or spent on items that, that didn't have, a lasting or impact on the budget. And we know when you add mental health support, when you know that you're dealing with learning loss, you know that when you're talking about, making our teaming process at the middle school whole, when we talk about managing class sizes, those are items that are fundamental to the work that we do here. So I think we're at a point, though, where Mr. Stevens is saying that we're needing to absorb those costs in our budget. So that's where all these pieces are mostly committed to, the dollars and resources.
Yep. Thank you. Yep, thanks for adding that. Just to highlight a couple of different pieces here overall supporting MTSS and social emotional learning. We see some BOCES services increases there in our 2070 function. Supervision costs across both the during the school year at buildings as well as summer school programming, having that supervision security in place as a district there. Those are reflected in 2020 and 2040 account codes. And then, like I said, the primary theme as we look through the entire portion of instructional, or I'm sorry, the instructional budget is related to the stimulus funding. There is some under the students with disabilities, school year portion of the budget there. There's that we work through special ed and project out placements in BOCES programs as well as private placements and district programs, all those different pieces there. There's new legislation in place as well for to age 22 in terms of services schools have to continue to provide. So I'm happy to provide the services, but we just have to reflect that within our budget as well. So that would mean those would be new costs. And then instructional software services under 2630. Those are both district, local, as well as some BOCES related services. We would see BOCES 8 on those that would flow in the 25-26 school year, but those are, again, different software services and programs supporting our instructional program. That covers, for the most part, the different functions throughout the instructional portion of the budget. I don't know if, Brett, you wanted to add any other pieces there as a whole, or if anyone had any questions.
Matt, this came up, I think, in a previous budget presentation, so I could probably just as easily find this, but you may know. The federal stimulus funds, about how much were we getting in those funds that now we have to account for general fund?
So overall, over the course of the 3 years, we had about $9.6 million in total, and that was across really 3 funding sources. It was CRSA, but CRSA was broke out into ESSER and GEAR funds, and then American Rescue Plan was ESSER funds. So we have about $2.4 million remaining for 23-24, and so that's essentially as we're looking to balance 24-25 budget. We do have some funds that were strictly coming out of the special aid fund and not supported in general fund, and those are coming back in 24-25. Yep. So current year, $2.4 million is the remaining balance that we'll be spending this year.
The budget that will be on the night will speak to programming that we are used to and accustomed to in Fairport. So we're not looking at any reductions of programming at this point in time. It does continue the great work that we're doing with MTSS, from building data warehouses, building curricular coherence, and having resources like the Wit and Wisdom texts that we need to continue to invest in. And it's about the clubs that we offer, the over 100 clubs that we offer, and the robust elective programs that we have. Those things are alive and well in this budget, and they'll be, as we continue to look at staffing analysis, using attrition, which means natural retirements, to absorb some of these costs. Mr. Stevens will be talking about that on the 19th as well. So, we do feel comfortable that we have a great plan to help us move forward, to meet the community's expectations and meet the board's goals with what we established in October with the budget goals.
Did I understand that correctly? Is the attrition built into this or not yet?
Partially at this point, because we're still doing some analysis. So that we do have again, I think a week and a half to continue to build upon that, and so that's why again, this is just a portion of the whole budget that we'll be eventually sharing, and you'll be apprised and informed on how it balances, because that's our goal, is to balance it, and we see a pathway to that.
So I guess my question, looking at our goals and looking at this, we know we can't go out with a 5.8% increase. So where is, and this isn't done, so if new board members and community members, I know we have a robust turnout on YouTube for these, but if you're looking at this, and we know that's not actually the number, we know it continues to change and grow, especially as the legislature hopefully by April 1st, but that's fluid for them. What are we looking at to be able to balance this? So how do we continue to offer all of our expectations and at the same time
You mentioned
build
one,
it?
But you mentioned one piece that is, hopefully the advocacy. I know that board members. I know we're also meeting with representatives locally. That advocacy is alive and well, but that's only part of it. There'll be natural attrition through retirements. There'll be, actually, discussions on our budget and looking at the margins on our budget and making sure that we are using projections accurately, but also in a way that doesn't put us in some fiscal parity.
To add to that, looking at our general fund reserves, what do we have for reserves availability and what can be utilized to assist with operating expenses? Keeping in mind that anything we do as a district is something that we have to consider long-term sustainability as a whole. So those are all different pieces to consider within the budget process.
Peter, if I can tap you on that, in the framework of using reserves, I know last year we used some to, was it debt service to fill that? So,
It's not technically a reserve, but we had the excess funds.
yeah. So how are we looking that way? Because we know sustainability-wise, we don't want to keep.
And those dry up, right? But
Yeah.
we're still sitting on, is it about 2 million in debt service? Or
Yeah,
less than that now? Or?
Debt service fund's a little different because that has a direct impact to the tax cap. So
Right.
that actually, using debt service fund money doesn't actually generate additional revenue. It only has an inverse relationship in the tax cap calculation. So, but there are additional funds left in there, and that helps us as a whole apply debt service funds against any oncoming local share of debt related to our capital projects. But again, that is not going towards any operating related costs that we have as a district. That's only managing the tax levy limit, tax cap that we have. But the reserves related to operating expenses that we have, and we're going to go over these at the March meeting as well, but we talked about the employer retirement system reserve can be applied against the ERS costs, teacher retirement system. That's a sub-fund reserve of the employer retirement system, workers' compensation reserve, unemployment insurance reserve. Those are 4 of the key reserves that the school district has that can assist with operating costs. And then just looking at those long term in terms of how long can those be utilized to sustain funding as a whole.
So you take a look at the goals, and I keep going back to these goals because I think they provide great clarity, and there's some natural push and pull with these goals, because how can you have every single opportunity for children and still be transparent and have fiscal responsibility, make sure that we maintain a strong financial position, and make sure we are bond rating remains strong. So, and also that number 3, weighs on us as well, and in a good way, because that's about keeping our facilities modern and sustainable through time, right? So that's what we're charged with, and I think that's our daily conversations, especially these last few weeks, huh, Mr. Stevens? It is about like how do we maintain these. So I think you have a nice balance here. You have like these are our high expectations, and it's not only the board's expectations, it's our students' expectations, it's our community's expectations, and we're also charged with 2 and 3 there. And I know that that's important to the board. So as we go through March 19th, as we go through April when we recommend adoption, we're going to be looking to answer these questions in a way that's just like this, right? But we're still in a place where we're waiting on numbers. Like, Dr. White is 100% correct. Like, we don't even know if we're going to get a budget by April 1st. So we're trying to build a budget, and we're trying to feel our way through it. So
My question for the representatives when we were in Albany was, if you don't pass your budget, then can we move our budget vote? And they were like, no. And so I don't quite understand that relationship if they can do it.
Your question was also like, if you keep changing foundation aid, formula for foundation aid, and it's a moving target each year, how do you expect us to make a predictable budget each year? And I think those are the questions that the board is bringing to advocacy channels, but that's related to 2, and it's related to 3 up there with the budget goals. And I'm not trying to pass the buck to them, because ultimately we will be responsible to this. And like I said, Mr. Stevens and I have had, he's probably more than he wants to have conversations with me on how we need to be thoughtful about responsibility, but also sustainability fiscally.
And I think that the question of the fiscal sustainability is where I see a lot of that push and pull, and Peter brought this up too, about when we're looking at, it's a % increase over last year's budget, and we're mostly rolling it over. But if you compare not to last year's budget, but to what our actual projected expenditures are, there are a lot of line items that we came in under, which is good. We're not, we're keeping our budget, but then we're also increasing next year's budget even more over that. So making sure that those margins are healthy enough that we're not going to end up running out of money for those items, but also not so large that we're really overtaxing based on what we need.
The thing that's in this budget, and I think we've talked about this in reports, is the grant funding, right? And I think now we're relying on government to support that. So I mean, yes, the projections have been there, and now we need to take what we've built upon and make sure that we are able to sustain into the future, because now we own it, which we're proud to do, and I think the board has invested a lot of resources in it. Mr. Stevens, did you want to add to that? That was circa
Was it, and the philosophy, I guess, is more philosophy for number 2 is always to be able to control our destiny. So when the governor comes out in a year like this to say, hey, I've given you 3 great years, but now I'm going to change the formula on you, and we don't think she'll be successful, but we don't know that yet, that if she is, or whoever holds that position is successful, number 2 gives us still the ability to control our destiny. So we have created the reserves where we don't have to just do slash, right? We don't have to slash programs, and that's the objective. And if we do think, hey, in 3 or 4 years, it's going to be a bad 3 or 4 years, then we can soft land, right? Those things. So I'm grateful that we've always looked at it that way. I think we're seeing that, and with what we've seen now with the budget, I know that you're looking at it. I think we've had a sense for a while that we know, we can't go out with 5%, right? The vote's just not going to be there. And we don't necessarily want to keep going to the cap if we don't have to, right? And so we have the resources to really dig in, and I know that's being done, so I'm grateful for it.
Thank you.
Matt, just out of curiosity, how much of the budget, the instructional budget increase, is contractual? So like our built-in pay raises that are contractually, like, I forget what negotiated collectively. So like not that we don't have, I don't want to say wiggle room on, but we are contractually obligated to pay the teachers whatever your percentage increase is. All of our employees, right? All of our collective bargain employees. So just because that's kind of a locked-in rate, I think that's interesting to know, like how much we're set to have to go up, if you can find that easily.
I think
click on the
I think
spreadsheet
the
and it'll
answer
do
to
it.
that. Glenn, like, looks-
I figured either he had it right at his
Well, I
thing
think
or
it's
he's got enough. Then
Matt-
don't, Matt, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
tries to look that up, but it is part of the process though. Like when we do budget and we do project, we know what the contracts are, and that's why I think when you look at healthcare and you look at the salaries and benefits, a lot of these lines, majority of our budget is salary and benefits. So I think, and we say that in the presentation. I don't know if Mr. Sims is ready to talk about that. If there's exact numbers you gotta get to, or-
If you don't,
So
it's
I'll-
fine.
I think it's a little.
So it's number-wise, when we're looking at our budget, we're looking at it really in a whole of positions
Yep.
because we have staff changes that take place from prior year to current year when we have positions being filled, retirements with new folks being hired. But just as a whole in terms of wages, to give you an idea, the instructional budget draft right now has about a $2.1 million increase in total wages. Again, that is coupled with the stimulus funded positions coming back in. That is related to any retirements that, as the 2 years cross take place, once we have the numbers of who's filled positions from 22-23 to 23-24, as well as resignations that happen throughout the year. So when we build the budget, especially related to wages, we're not building it from a budget to budget standpoint. We're building it from looking at the people in positions right now at that snapshot in time. So that's about a 3.7% change in total wages. Some wages and some budget lines as a whole in there. This is the instructional portion of the budget. Some of those lines may be flat increases because it's a supervision hourly rate that's remaining as is within a contract, right? So some of those factors are in place as well. We also budget for any new in-service that might take place for people across the district in the different positions. If they are an in-service and get additional amount onto their base, those are all pieces factored in that are contractual.
No, I didn't.
Yep.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot the way I did.
Nope, that's
It's just always one of the curious things for me. I think it's important to know for people looking at this how much, when they see budget numbers and they see an increase, they're like, okay, but it's not like you can just. It's not like you can just cut your Netflix and then you're out. Then that saves you the money. Like we're contractually obligated for operating costs.
We're
and paying.
impacted by
And we
inflation
want
as
to
well,
be paying our
in the cost of living
Yes.
increasing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a business just like everybody else.
But in negotiations, right, to your all's advocacy, and I wish I could have joined you this year, when we are in those negotiations, I say we loosely because the board's not there, but we're trying to project what we think our revenues can sustain as well. And when you change the formula or threaten to change it, suddenly when we came to a 3 or 4 year agreement with our employees, suddenly you're ripping the rug out from underneath us because this is what we projected, this is what we counted on. Taking away that, not cool.
Yeah, and to add, salary as it relates to the instructional budget, about 73% is related to wages. So of the 81.6 million of instructional budget, 59.6 is related to wages. So about 73%. That percentage, as you know, holds fairly true across the entire budget as a whole.
Behind all of the amazing things that happen here, right? And whether it's our essential staff or professional certificated staff, it takes people to provide. We're excited to present it.
I'm appreciative of the advocacy efforts of our Albany team and everyone, because it seems like there's one person who was called like it is amazing how across party lines, our lawmakers locally and statewide. I know from talking to you guys how much support there is for not doing what the governor suggested, and it's frustrating, but it's heartening to see that support across the aisles. It's frustrating that we're all in this spot. I mean, I think we're thankfully better than a lot of districts.
We're not used to getting caught up in the politics of it, and fortunately, being close to 10 years in this is what it is every year, right? Board members who've been on here for multiple years, you see, it's like there's the same type of advocacies. There's the leverage that politics plays in this. That it's just a natural part of life, and we think public education frankly should be taught politics.
Great.
Any other questions? I know we'll be talking about this at length over the next few weeks, months, before we actually go ahead and adopt it and then have our vote. Matt, thank you for answering all our questions and adjusting and going back and making more adjustments. I agree with Brian. I just wanted to say that I know some of us did go to Albany. I know many of us have been reaching out to our representatives. I know that we're going to have a day at the end of March specifically with our representatives from this area to talk about, what we should be doing, what we can be doing to make sure that that foundation aid is where it needs to be. Hopefully, yes.
I want to make a plug, and I know that board members will be a part of the 27th of March and April 10th. As we talk about under the hood, I know that we'll have school representatives here. We also invited some of those representatives from the state. We've our local partners, community members. We're going to be getting under the hood of the budget, really, to start talking about some of those comparisons, some of the the dollars, the student ratios that I know that people have questions about. So I hope, I know some board members will be a part of it, but I also know that we'll have a couple community members and some staff representatives as well as we try to learn our way through the budget and meet that goal of being transparent.
Demystifying the budget.
Yes. Don't say that because Lindsay doesn't like that.
I know. I know.
Look at her shake her
I
head back
know.
there.
I just had to use her. But I also just want to make a plug in case anyone's watching from home that our website is up and running. Yeah. So I was actually gonna say thank you to Lindsay as well. It is. I went to look for something I think yesterday or today, and I was like, oh, it's new. So just if you're listening at home, check it out. I think there will be additions, but there's a lot there to look at. It's much easier to navigate, and thank you, Lindsay. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I guess we're good. So I need a motion to enter into executive session for matters pertaining to the job and duties and performance evaluations of members in non-collective bargaining units. We are going to invite Doug Loft to attend, Matt Stevens, Tanya Wilson. I'm going to say your last name wrong. Mason. And yes, Brett Provenzano. You're not, but that's okay.
He's like, okay,
Must have been when Sarah was mad at me this afternoon.
Brian, anyone? Nicole, all in favor? Aye. Okay, so 7-0. And Brian and Nicole.